The Curious Case of Coffee. Captain Sarah Chen of the cargo ship Thunderchild was having what she considered a perfectly normal Tuesday morning until a ship twice the size of a small moon materialized outside her viewport. She took another sip of her coffee, blinked twice, and decided that no, this definitely wasn't a caffeine-induced hallucination. Well, she said to no one in particular, that's new. The massive vessel gleamed like polished obsidian, its surface covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift and flow like liquid mercury. It made the Thunderchild, a respectable mid-size cargo hauler, look like a toy boat next to an aircraft carrier. "Hey, Rodriguez," she called out to her chief engineer, who was tinkering with the coffee maker's temperature controls for the 100th time this week. "You seeing this?" "If you mean the impossibly huge alien ship that just pulled a magic trick out of hyperspace, then yes, Cap, I'm seeing it." Rodriguez didn't even look up from the coffee maker, but more importantly, I think I'd finally fixed the temperature fluctuation issue. The ship-wide comm crackled to life before Sarah could respond. The voice that came through was perfectly modulated, each syllable precisely engineered for maximum clarity and maximum intimidation. "Unidentified vessel. This is the Concordia exploration vessel Eternal Harmony. You have entered space under the protection of the Concordiate. Prepare for scanning and categorization." Sarah raised an eyebrow at Rodriguez, who had finally looked up from his beloved coffee maker. "Scanning and categorization. Sounds fun. Should we put on our formal wear?" "I think these might be first contact protocols, Cap," Rodriguez said, finally showing a hint of concern. "Maybe we should." A beam of silvery light swept through the bridge, passing through walls and equipment as if they were made of glass. Sarah felt a slight tingling sensation as it passed through her body. "Scan complete," the voice announced. "Species categorization. Human. Technology level. Category 3. Threat assessment. Minimal. Prepare for representative transfer." Before Sarah could process what that meant, a column of light appeared on her bridge, coalescing into three figures that could have stepped out of a surrealist painting. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, their bodies covered in what appeared to be living metal that flowed and shifted with their movements. Their faces were smooth masks with geometric patterns that pulsed with internal light. The central figure stepped forward, its mask reconfiguring itself into what might have been an attempt at a smile. "I am Observer First Class Zixus of the Concordiate. Your vessel has been selected for cultural assessment. Resistance is unnecessary and would be futile." Sarah took another sip of her coffee. "Good morning, Observer First Class Zixus. I'm Captain Sarah Chen of the Thunderchild. Would you like some coffee?" The geometric patterns on Zixus's face spun in what might have been confusion. "Your response does not match predicted behavioral patterns for a Category 3 species encountering a Category 1 civilization." "Sorry about that," Sarah said, not feeling sorry at all. "Tuesday mornings are for coffee and casual conversation on this ship. It's kind of a tradition." The two observers flanking Zixus exchanged looks, their masks rippling with patterns Sarah couldn't begin to interpret. One of them produced what looked like a highly advanced tablet and began making rapid notes. "Explain this. Coffee," Zixus demanded, though there was a note of curiosity creeping into that perfectly modulated voice. Rodriguez, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly perked up. "Oh, you want to know about coffee? Cap, permission to introduce our guests to the finest beverage humanity has ever created." Sarah grinned. "Permission granted, Chief. Give them the full experience." What followed was possibly the most unusual first contact scenario in human history. Rodriguez, in his element, gave a passionate 30-minute presentation on the history, cultivation, and preparation of coffee, complete with demonstrations using his meticulously maintained brewing equipment. The Concordiate observers, initially skeptical, became increasingly fascinated. Their masks shifted through complex patterns as they scanned each new cup Rodriguez prepared, their internal sensors presumably working overtime to analyze the beverage's chemical composition. "This substance," Zixis said, holding a cup of Rodriguez's special blend, "it contains a psychoactive compound that affects your neural functions." "Caffeine," Sarah confirmed, "perfectly safe for humans. Actually helps us function better, especially during long space hauls. And you willingly consume this neural stimulant as part of your daily routine." The second observer's mask displayed what might have been alarm. "Multiple times a day, usually," Rodriguez said cheerfully. "Want to try it?" The observer's masks exploded into a frenzy of geometric patterns. After what seemed like a silent but intense discussion, Zixis stepped forward. "In the interest of thorough cultural assessment, I will attempt to consume this coffee." What happened next would later be recorded in both human and Concordiat historical archives, though with slightly different interpretations. Zixis's mask reconfigured itself, forming what looked like a small opening. The coffee was carefully poured in, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then Zixis's entire form began to glow, the living metal of their body rippling with waves of energy. The geometric patterns on their mask began spinning at dizzying speeds. "This is unprecedented," Zixis announced, their voice modulation failing slightly. "The neural stimulation effects are fascinating. The complex organic compounds, the taste experience. I must revise our initial categorization." The other observers rushed to support Zixis, who seemed to be having trouble maintaining their usual rigid posture. Their tablets were frantically recording data. "Cap," Rodriguez whispered, "I think we just got a highly advanced alien drunk on coffee." Sarah watched as Zixis attempted to explain the experience to their fellow observers, their usually precise language becoming increasingly poetic. "I think we did more than that, Rodriguez. I think we just demonstrated that humanity has something to offer even a Category 1 civilization." The next few hours were a blur of coffee tastings, cultural exchanges, and increasingly animated discussions about human cuisine and recreational substances. The observers' initial intimidating demeanor had completely dissolved, replaced by an almost childlike curiosity about human culture. "Your species," Zixis declared, now on their fourth cup of espresso, "demonstrates remarkable innovation in the realm of sensory experiences. The Concordiat has achieved interstellar travel, manipulated the fundamental forces of the universe, and created artificial worlds. Yet we never considered the possibility of developing substances purely for pleasure and social bonding." Sarah couldn't help but smile. "Sometimes the simplest pleasures are the most profound." Observer Zixis. "Please," the alien said, their mask forming what was now recognizably a smile, after sharing this remarkable beverage. "I believe we can dispense with formal titles. The Concordiat will need to seriously revise its species categorization protocols. Any civilization that can create something like coffee clearly cannot be properly evaluated by our current metrics." As Sarah watched Zixis and their fellow observers enthusiastically sampling Rodriguez's coffee collection, she realized that this bizarre first contact scenario might have achieved more than years of formal diplomatic relations could have. Sometimes, the best way to bridge the gap between civilizations was through something as simple as sharing a cup of coffee. "Captain Chen," Zixis said, their voice having lost all its artificial modulation, "I believe this is the beginning of a most interesting cultural exchange. The Concordiat has much to learn from humanity, starting with this magnificent beverage." "Just wait until you try hot chocolate," Sarah replied with a grin. The geometric patterns on all three observers' masks began spinning again, and Sarah knew that the galaxy would never be quite the same. Who would have thought that humanity's first major diplomatic breakthrough with an advanced alien civilization would come not through technology or military might, but through a well-brewed cup of coffee? As she watched Rodriguez beginning another enthusiastic explanation of different roasting techniques to his rapt alien audience, Sarah made a mental note to requisition more coffee supplies. Something told her they were going to need a lot more in the coming days. After all, this was just the beginning. Protocol breakers. The Concordiate Embassy on Earth was a marvel of alien architecture, a towering structure of living metal that constantly shifted and flowed like quicksilver caught in zero gravity. It would have been perfectly impressive if not for the small coffee cart parked right outside its main entrance, complete with a hand-painted sign reading "Best Coffee in the Galaxy, Human and Alien Friendly." Inside, Ambassador Helena Martinez was trying very hard not to laugh as she watched a group of Concordiate diplomats attempt to navigate their first casual Friday. "I do not understand," said senior diplomat Nexus, their geometric patterns swirling in confusion. "If Friday attire is meant to be casual, why does it require such complex protocols to determine what is appropriately casual while maintaining professional standards?" "That's the fun part," Helena explained, straightening her favorite casual blazer. "It's all about finding the right balance." "Balance is good," Nexus agreed earnestly. "Balance is orderly. But these jeans, they are deliberately manufactured with imperfections. And this is desirable." Before Helena could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the embassy. The living metal walls pulsed with urgent patterns, and Concordiate staff began moving with precise, practiced efficiency. "Warning," announced the embassy's eye. "Unknown substance detected in environmental systems. Emergency Protocol 7249B now in effect." Helena recognized the particular tone of panic in the eye's voice. "Let me guess. Someone tried to make toast again." Nexus's patterns shifted to what she had learned to recognize as embarrassment. The chemical transformation of bread through controlled application of heat seemed like a simple enough process to replicate. "But you tried to improve it with Concordiate technology, didn't you?" "We merely attempted to optimize the thermal distribution using a modified plasma field." Nexus's patterns swirled faster. The results were unexpected. Helena sighed and pulled out her personal communicator. "Joey? Yeah, it's me. We need another toaster. And maybe run a class on basic Earth appliances for the new staff. Thanks." This had become a regular occurrence since the Concordiate had established their embassy on Earth. The highly advanced alien civilization, capable of feats that seemed like magic to humans, kept being completely baffled by the simple, practical solutions humans had developed over centuries. "I have been studying human protocols," Nexus said as maintenance drones rushed past, attempting to deal with the toast situation. "They are remarkably flexible." "That's one way of putting it," Helena agreed. "We tend to see protocols as guidelines rather than absolute rules." "Yes, this has been noted with some concern by the Protocol Adherence Committee." Nexus's patterns formed what Helena recognized as their equivalent of a wry smile. They have had to create 17 new subcommittees just to handle what they call human variations. Their conversation was interrupted by a young human intern rushing up, looking slightly out of breath. "Ambassador Martinez, we have a situation in the Cultural Exchange Center." Helena raised an eyebrow. "What kind of situation?" "Well, remember how we were supposed to introduce the Concordiate representatives to human sports? Someone tried to explain the rules of cricket, and now they're attempting to create a mathematical model to prove it's impossible." "Impossible? The sport or the rules?" "Both. They've been at it for 6 hours, and I think they're starting to question the nature of reality itself." Helena pinched the bridge of her nose. "Right. Nexus, want to help me explain how some things don't need to make perfect logical sense to be enjoyable?" "I would be fascinated to observe this discussion," Nexus replied, their patterns showing intense interest. "Although I must admit, my own analysis of cricket rules has led to some disturbing philosophical questions." They made their way to the Cultural Exchange Center, passing through corridors where human artwork hung next to shifting Concordiate visual displays. The mixing of the two cultures was evident everywhere. Human plants in alien self-maintaining pots, traditional Earth furniture made from living metal, and the ever-present coffee stations that had become mandatory in all Concordiate facilities. The scene in the Cultural Exchange Center was exactly as chaotic as Helena had feared. A group of Concordiate analysts had covered an entire wall with complex mathematical formulae, while a holographic simulation of a cricket match played in slow motion, being dissected frame by frame. The probability matrices simply do not align with any rational sporting framework. One analyst was saying, their patterns showing clear distress. The Duckworth-Lewis method alone violates 3 fundamental laws of logical game theory. That's rather the point, Helena interrupted smoothly. Not everything humans do is based on pure logic or efficiency. The analysts turned to her, their patterns showing various degrees of confusion and frustration. But how can you maintain order without logical frameworks? One asked. Sometimes disorder is more interesting than order, Helena explained. Think about jazz music. Another human invention that probably defies your mathematical models. Ah yes, jazz? Nexus interjected, their patterns brightening. The Protocol Adherence Committee spent 3 months trying to create standardized rules for improvisation before realizing the inherent contradiction. The analyst's patterns swirled in what Helena had learned to recognize as the Concordiate equivalent of a collective headache. One of them was still staring at the cricket equations with something like despair. Perhaps, Helena suggested gently, we should move on to something simpler. How about we start with basketball? Yes, Nexus agreed quickly. A sport with clear numerical scoring and defined spatial boundaries would be more comfortable. As they began setting up for a basic basketball demonstration, Helena's communicator buzzed again. The message made her close her eyes and count to 10 slowly. Nexus, she said carefully, why am I getting reports that the embassy's AI is trying to order 1,000 espresso machines? Nexus's patterns shifted to what could only be described as sheepish. There may have been some discussion about optimizing coffee availability to improve diplomatic efficiency. And the AI took it upon itself to place the order. We may have been a bit too successful in teaching it to show initiative like humans do. Helena looked around the room. At the cricket equations that threatened to break the laws of mathematics, at the confused but earnestly trying Concordiate analysts, at the signs of human chaos slowly infecting the perfect order of alien technology, and couldn't help but laugh. You know what? Keep the order. But let's teach the AI about budgeting first. An excellent suggestion. Nexus agreed, their patterns showing amusement. Although I suspect teaching artificial intelligence about human financial practices will require yet another subcommittee. Probably several, Helena agreed. But that's the fun of cultural exchange, isn't it? Finding new ways to complicate each other's lives while pretending we're simplifying them. The cricket analysts had now moved on to debating whether the concept of a sticky wicket represented a fundamental flaw in the space-time continuum. Helena decided to leave them to it. Sometimes the best way to understand humanity was to get thoroughly confused by it first. As they left the Cultural Exchange Center, Nexus's patterns formed a complex sequence that Helena had never seen before. You know, the alien diplomat said thoughtfully, before we encountered humans, the Concordiate believed we had achieved the perfect balance of technological advancement and social order. Now we're beginning to wonder if perfect order might be perfectly boring. Welcome to the human condition, Helena replied with a smile. Now how about we go get some coffee, and I'll try to explain the offside rule in soccer. Nexus's patterns instantly shifted to alarm. Perhaps we should address one sporting crisis at a time. Ambassador. The walls of the embassy pulsed with another announcement about unauthorized toast experiments, and Helena decided that was probably wise. After all, they had all the time in the galaxy to explore the beautiful chaos that happened when human creativity met alien precision. And if they accidentally broke a few protocols along the way, well, that was just part of the fun. The emergency. The joint human Concordiate space station Harmony Point was supposed to represent the pinnacle of cooperation between the two species. Its sweeping curves of living metal merged seamlessly with human-designed habitation modules, creating a structure that was both beautiful and highly functional. At least, that was the theory. Chief Engineer Maria Rodriguez, no relation to the now famous Coffee Rodriguez, who had revolutionized interspecies diplomacy, was starting to have doubts about the highly functional part as she stared at her diagnostic screen. "That's not supposed to do that," she muttered, watching as error messages cascaded across her display. Next to her Concordiate counterpart, engineering overseer Parallax, was experiencing what appeared to be the alien equivalent of a panic attack, their geometric patterns cycling through warning colors at an alarming rate. "The quantum harmonics are completely destabilized," Parallax announced, their usually precise voice modulation cracking slightly. "This defies all established engineering protocols." Maria was about to respond when the station's lighting shifted to deep red and the AI's voice echoed through the corridors. "Warning. Critical system failure detected in primary power core. Quantum cascade failure imminent. Emergency Protocol 9998X is now in effect." "This is not a drill." "Repeat, this is not a drill." "Well," Maria said, pulling up more detailed diagnostics, "that's not good. Not good." Parallax's patterns were now strobing in what Maria recognized as extreme distress. "This is catastrophic. The emergency protocols for this scenario alone are 7,000 pages long." Maria was already grabbing her toolkit. "How long do we have before the cascade failure becomes irreversible?" "Approximately 28 minutes, Parallax replied, pulling up the relevant protocols on their advanced tablet. "The evacuation procedures alone will take 45 minutes to implement properly." "Then we're not evacuating," Maria said firmly. "We're fixing it." "Fixing it? Without following proper procedures?" That's, Parallax seemed to be struggling to even find the words. "That's exactly what we're going to do." Maria was already heading for the access tunnel that led to the power core. "You can either help me or start those evacuation procedures, but I'm not letting this station fail." After a moment's hesitation, Parallax followed her. Their patterns had settled into what might have been resignation. "The protocol committee will never approve of this. They can file a complaint after we save everyone's lives." The access tunnel was a hybrid of human and Concordiate technology, which meant it was both incredibly advanced and had handholds that actual people could use. They made their way quickly to the power core chamber, where the problem became immediately apparent. The quantum core, a marvel of Concordiate engineering, was supposed to glow with a steady blue light. Instead, it was pulsing with angry red energy, and the human-designed containment systems were struggling to manage the increasing power fluctuations. "The quantum matrices are collapsing," Parallax announced, their sensors rapidly analyzing the situation. "The containment algorithms cannot adapt quickly enough to the cascade effect." Maria was already examining the junction where human and Concordiate technologies interfaced. "The problem isn't the algorithms," she said suddenly. "Look at the power flow patterns." She pulled up a holographic display showing the energy distribution through the station. "The quantum harmonics are actually trying to self-correct, but our systems are fighting each other. The Concordiate protocols are too rigid, and our systems are too flexible. They're creating a feedback loop. But the protocols are designed to maintain perfect stability." Parallax protested, though their patterns showed growing uncertainty. "Sometimes perfect stability is the enemy of actual stability," Maria replied, already pulling panels off the human-designed interface systems. "We need to create a buffer zone, something that can translate between the two systems. That would require completely redesigning the interface protocols. We don't have time to." "Who said anything about redesigning?" Maria was pulling components from different systems, her hands moving with the speed of someone who had spent their life improvising engineering solutions. "We're going to build a bridge." Over the next 15 minutes, Parallax watched in what might have been horror or fascination as Maria essentially created a new type of interface from spare parts and components that were definitely not meant to work together. She used coolant lines from the human systems to modulate the quantum fluctuations, rewired power distributors to create makeshift harmonic stabilizers, and at one point used what appeared to be a coffee maker's temperature control unit to regulate energy flow. "This cannot possibly work," Parallax said, "their patterns showing a complex mix of emotions. It violates at least 37 fundamental engineering principles." "Maybe," Maria agreed, making one final connection. "But sometimes the best solutions aren't the ones you plan for. They're the ones you discover when you have no other choice." She activated her improvised system. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then gradually, the angry red pulses from the quantum core began to steady. The energy flow patterns started to stabilize, finding a new equilibrium that wasn't quite what either system was designed for, but somehow worked better than both. "Impossible," Parallax whispered, their sensors confirming what they were seeing. "The quantum harmonics are. They're actually stronger than before, more stable." "But how?" "Sometimes systems work better when you let them adapt naturally instead of forcing them to follow rigid protocols," Maria explained, running final checks on her improvised solution. "Kind of like how humans and the Concordiat work better together when we stop trying to make everything perfect and just figure things out as we go." The station's eye broke in. Critical system failure averted. Power core stabilizing. New operational parameters detected and integrated. Emergency protocol 9998X canceled. Maria let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "See, sometimes breaking protocol is exactly what you need to do." Parallax was still staring at the redouts, their patterns showing what might have been awe. "The protocol committee will require a full report on this incident." "Oh, I'm sure they will." Maria grinned. "Just wait until they find out their quantum core was saved by parts from a coffee maker." Perhaps. Parallax's patterns shifted to something new, something that might have been humor. "Perhaps we should omit that particular detail from the official report." "Breaking protocol already? I'm impressed. I am merely adapting to circumstances, as you humans seem so fond of doing." As they began the process of documenting the incident, with certain creative omissions, Maria couldn't help but think about how this crisis exemplified the growing relationship between humans and the Concordiat. Sometimes the best solutions came not from careful planning and rigid protocols, but from being willing to try the impossible when necessary. The quantum core hummed with its new harmony, neither purely Concordiat nor purely human in its operation, but something new and better than either alone. It was, Maria thought, a pretty good metaphor for where both species were headed. "You know," she said to Parallax as they finished their modified report, "I think we just invented a whole new way of managing quantum harmonics." Indeed, Parallax agreed, their patterns showing what was definitely amusement now. "Though I suspect explaining it to the protocol committee will be more challenging than the actual emergency." "Well," Maria replied with a grin, "we should probably have some coffee ready for that meeting." "An excellent suggestion. Though perhaps we should use a different coffee maker than the one currently helping to stabilize the quantum core." The station's eye, which had been quietly observing this exchange, chose that moment to chime in. "Shall I order more coffee makers? I have noticed they seem to be crucial components in human problem-solving methodologies." Maria and Parallax looked at each other, and for the first time in Concordiat history, a member of their species actually laughed out loud. The sound echoed through the station's corridors, mixing with human laughter to create its own kind of harmony, one that no protocol could have predicted or planned for, but that worked perfectly all the same. Cultural exchange. The Concordiat Cultural Analysis Center looked more like a particularly chaotic human art gallery than a sophisticated alien research facility. Holographic displays showed everything from classical paintings to viral cat videos, while sound systems played an eclectic mix of human music ranging from classical symphonies to the latest pop hits. Dr. Maya Patel, head of the Human Cultural Exchange Program, was trying very hard to maintain her professional composure as she watched a group of Concordiat researchers attempt to understand the concept of interpretive dance. "But what are they interpreting?" asked Research Coordinator Vector, their geometric patterns showing genuine distress. The movements appear to follow no discernible pattern or protocol. That's kind of the point, Maya explained patiently. It's about expressing emotions and ideas through free-form movement. Free-form. Another researcher, designated Matrix, seemed to be having trouble with the concept. How can one form be more free than another? Surely all forms are bound by physical laws and spatial limitations. Before Maya could respond, the center's main display lit up with a new cultural artifact, a compilation of human comedy shows. The researchers immediately turned their attention to this new puzzle, their patterns shifting rapidly as they tried to analyze the content. "I believe I am beginning to understand the structure of human humor," Vector announced proudly. "It appears to be based on the deliberate violation of expected outcomes to create cognitive dissonance." "Well, that's part of it," Maya agreed. "But there's more to it than just subverting expectations." Indeed, Matrix added, their patterns showing intense concentration. "Our analysis suggests that timing and context play crucial roles, yet we cannot formulate a reliable protocol for determining optimal comedic timing." The display shifted to show a classic Charlie Chaplin film, and the researchers' patterns went into what Maya had started calling confusion spirals. "This is most perplexing," Vector said after a moment. "The actions depicted are clearly inefficient and often counterproductive, yet human viewers derive pleasure from observing them. How can failure be entertaining?" Maya smiled. "Sometimes the journey is more interesting than the destination. It's not about whether Charlie Chaplin succeeds or fails. It's about how he handles the situation." "Ah." Matrix's patterns brightened. "Like the emergency repair of the quantum core on Harmony Point, using the coffee maker components." "Exactly. Although I'm pretty sure that wasn't meant to be funny at the time." The researchers huddled together, their patterns synchronizing as they processed this new perspective. Maya used the moment to check her tablet, where new cultural artifacts were being queued up for analysis. The list included everything from Shakespeare plays to internet memes, each carefully selected to help the Concordiate understand the full spectrum of human creativity. "Dr. Patel," Vector said suddenly, "we have been studying human entertainment forms for 3 months, 4 days, and 17 hours, yet we seem to be generating more questions than answers." "Welcome to the humanities," Maya replied with a grin, "where every answer leads to 10 more questions. Most inefficient," Matrix observed, though their patterns showed what might have been excitement rather than disapproval, yet strangely compelling. The display changed again, this time showing a human rock concert. The researchers' patterns immediately began pulsing in sync with the music, an unconscious response that had led to some fascinating research papers on the universal nature of rhythm. "The sonic vibrations are highly irregular," Vector noted, "yet they create predictable emotional responses in human listeners. How can chaos produce consistent results?" "Maybe chaos isn't the opposite of order," Maya suggested. "Maybe it's just a different kind of order that we haven't fully understood yet." This philosophical tangent was interrupted by the arrival of Ambassador Helena Martinez, who took one look at the cultural artifacts being displayed and raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess, trying to explain performance art again." "We have progressed to analyzing the relationship between chaos and entertainment," Matrix informed her proudly. "Though we are still struggling with the concept of slapstick comedy." Helena watched as the display showed a classic Three Stooges routine. "Maybe we should start with something simpler. Have you tried analyzing children's television shows yet?" The researchers' patterns shifted to show interest, and Maya quickly pulled up episodes of several classic children's programs. What followed was possibly the most surreal cultural analysis session yet. "This large yellow avian creature," Vector said, "studying Big Bird with intense concentration. It teaches complex social and emotional concepts through simple scenarios and musical numbers. Most efficient." "Yes," Matrix agreed, their patterns showing excitement. "And observe how the mathematical concepts are integrated into entertaining narratives. Perhaps this is why human children learn to be so creative in their problem-solving approaches." Helena and Maya exchanged amused glances as the researchers became completely engrossed in analyzing Sesame Street, their patterns showing more genuine enjoyment than they probably realized. "You know," Helena said quietly to Maya, "I think we're making more progress teaching them about humanity through children's shows than we did with all our formal cultural exchange programs." "Sometimes the simplest approaches are the most effective," Maya agreed. "Though I'm a bit worried about what will happen when they discover internet cat videos." "Too late," Helena replied, pointing to another display where a group of researchers were watching compilation videos of cats knocking things off tables, with an intensity usually reserved for studying quantum physics. "The felines appear to be conducting gravity experiments," one researcher was saying, "yet they show no interest in recording or analyzing their results. Most inefficient research methodology." "But look at their precision," another argued. "Each object is carefully tested at different heights and angles. Surely this indicates a systematic approach to environmental manipulation." Maya had to bite her lip to keep from laughing. "Should we tell them that the cats are just being cats?" "Let them theorize," Helena said with a smile. "Sometimes the wrong questions lead to the right insights." The day continued with more cultural analysis, each new human art form or entertainment medium generating fresh waves of confusion, fascination, and increasingly complex theories among the Concordia researchers. They analyzed everything from puppet shows to modern art installations, their attempts to find logical patterns in human creativity leading to some surprisingly profound observations. "I believe I have had what humans call an epiphany," Vector announced near the end of the day. "The apparent chaos in human art and entertainment is not truly random. It is instead a form of organized complexity that operates on principles we have not yet learned to measure." "That's actually a pretty good insight," Maya said, impressed. "Indeed," Matrix added, their patterns showing what might have been excitement. "Perhaps the protocol committee has been approaching human culture from the wrong angle. Instead of trying to categorize and regulate it, we should be studying how it generates new patterns and possibilities." Helena smiled. "Now you're getting it. Human creativity isn't about following rules or breaking them. It's about finding new ways to see the world." "Most fascinating," Vector agreed, their patterns showing deep thought. "Though I still do not understand why the cats do not publish their experimental results." Maya decided that some mysteries of human culture could wait for another day. After all, they had plenty of time to explore the wonderful chaos of human creativity together, one confused alien researcher at a time. As she watched the researchers continue their analysis of human culture, Maya couldn't help but think that this confusion and curiosity, this willing embrace of the unexplainable, might be the greatest gift humanity could offer to their new alien friends. Sometimes the best way to understand the universe was to stop trying to make perfect sense of it. And if that meant watching more cat videos in the name of cultural exchange, well, that was just part of the job. The new protocol. The emergency meeting of the Concordiate High Council was not going well. The normally pristine chamber, with its flowing lines of living metal and perfectly modulated atmospheric controls, crackled with tension. The geometric patterns of the assembled council members shifted in what humans had learned to recognize as extreme agitation. Ambassador Helena Martinez sat quietly in her observer's seat, watching as the Concordiate's most powerful leaders argued about the approaching crisis. Next to her, senior diplomat Nexus's patterns showed a complex mix of worry and what might have been hope. "The swarm vessels will reach our outer colonies in less than 30 standard days," announced High Counselor Prime, their patterns pulsing with urgent rhythms. "Our standard defensive protocols have proven ineffective against their adaptive technology." "How is this possible?" demanded another council member. "The swarm's technological level should be inferior to ours. They do not follow expected patterns," reported the defense coordinator, their patterns showing frustration. "Their ships appear to operate on principles that defy our analytical models. They improvise." Helena couldn't help but notice how that last word seemed to cause a ripple of discomfort through the council chamber. After all their time dealing with humans, The Concordiate still struggled with the concept of improvisation. "If I may speak," she said, rising from her seat. All attention turned to her, patterns shifting to show various degrees of curiosity and skepticism. "The human ambassador is recognized," High Counselor Prime announced formally. "You're facing an enemy that doesn't play by the rules," Helena said simply. "They adapt, they improvise, they find unexpected solutions." Sound familiar? The council chamber filled with the subtle harmonic tones that indicated intense communication among the members. Their patterns swirled and shifted as they processed her words. "You are suggesting," High Counselor Prime said carefully, "that we should adopt human methodologies." "I'm suggesting that you already have," Helena replied. "The coffee maker that helped save Harmony Point. The cultural insights that came from watching cat videos. The way your engineers are learning to work with chaos instead of just trying to control it. Every time you faced a challenge that your protocols couldn't handle, the solution came from being willing to try something new." The council's patterns showed a mix of recognition and uncertainty. Nexus stepped forward, their patterns showing determination. "Ambassador Martinez is correct," they announced. "Our contact with humans has shown us that there are other ways to approach problems, ways that our protocols never considered. But our protocols are the foundation of our civilization," protested one council member. "They have guided us for millennia." "And they've served you well," Helena agreed. "But maybe it's time for those protocols to evolve, just like you did when you first tried coffee." That got a reaction. A ripple of what might have been embarrassed amusement through the council's patterns. Every one of them had their own story about their first encounter with human beverages and the chaos that followed. "What exactly are you proposing?" High Counselor Prime asked. Helena smiled. "I'm proposing we stop treating this as a problem to be solved by either human methods or Concordiate protocols. Let's combine them. Your precision and our creativity. Your advanced technology and our talent for thinking outside the box. Create something new, a way of dealing with threats that neither of our species could have developed alone." The council chamber erupted in harmonic discussions as the members debated this unprecedented suggestion. Helena used the moment to send a message to Earth, where teams of human scientists and engineers were already working on ideas that combined human ingenuity with Concordiate technology. Finally, High Counselor Prime's patterns settled into the formal configuration that indicated a decision had been reached. "The Council has concluded that these circumstances require unprecedented measures." Their patterns showed what might have been wry amusement, and as our experience with humans has repeatedly demonstrated, unprecedented usually means interesting. What followed was the most unusual military planning session in either species' history. Human tactical experts worked alongside Concordiate strategists, finding ways to make the aliens' perfect formations more unpredictable. Engineers from both species collaborated to create weapons that combined Concordiate precision with human creativity. Even the ships themselves were modified, their living metal learning to adapt and change like the human vessels they now fought alongside. The result was something entirely new. A defense force that could match the swarm's adaptability while maintaining the Concordiate's technological superiority. When the swarm finally arrived, they found themselves facing an enemy that could not only match their improvisation, but exceed it with the added power of advanced alien technology. The battle, when it came, was brief but spectacular. The swarm's adaptive ships found themselves outmaneuvered by vessels that combined Concordiate living metal with human-inspired tactical systems. Their attempts to predict and counter their opponent's moves failed because there was no pattern to predict, just like trying to anticipate where a cat might choose to knock something off a table. In the end, the swarm retreated, their supposedly unstoppable advance broken by the combination of human chaos and Concordiate order. But the real victory wasn't just military. It was in what the experience taught both species about themselves and each other. "I believe," Nexus said to Helena as they watched the victory celebrations from the council chamber's observation deck, "that we need to create a new protocol." "Oh," Helena raised an eyebrow. "What kind of protocol?" one that acknowledges that the best solutions often come from breaking protocols. Nexus's patterns show definite amusement now. We will call it Protocol Zero. Protocol Zero. Yes, it will state that in any situation where existing protocols prove inadequate, it is not only permitted but encouraged to. What is the human phrase? Wing it. Helena laughed. The protocol committee is going to love that. They will adapt, Nexus replied confidently. After all, it is what we do now, thanks to humanity's influence. Though I suspect we will never be quite as comfortable with chaos as you are. That's probably for the best, Helena said, watching as human and Concordiate ships danced together in space, their movements a perfect blend of precision and improvisation. The galaxy needs both order and chaos, structure and creativity. That's what makes it interesting. Indeed, Nexus's patterns shifted to show contentment. Though I must admit, I never expected our species' greatest advancement to begin with a cup of coffee. Speaking of which, Helena grinned. Wait until you try what our engineers have done with the new coffee makers. They've incorporated some of your quantum harmonics technology. Nexus's patterns showed alarm. Is that safe? Probably not. But it makes an amazing espresso. As they watched the celebration continue, both human and alien knew that this was just the beginning. The universe was full of challenges that neither species could face alone, but together. Together, they could create solutions that neither order nor chaos could have produced independently. And if those solutions sometimes involved coffee makers in unexpected ways, well, that was just part of the wonderful chaos that made life interesting. After all, as Protocol Zero would soon state, the best protocols are the ones that know when to break themselves. The end.